What's up, everybody? It's about that time for another edition of the Crew Radio Show. I'm Kevin Swan, co-host of the show, and the crew are professional people who are also friends that come together to talk about the things you want us to talk about. We talk about it all, and we don't hold back. So come on and join us for another edition of the Crew Radio Show. Welcome to the crew here on WHOV 88.1 FM. And listen, y'all, we need y'all to go to our YouTube channel, The Crew Radio Show. So if you're checking it out there, we're thankful that you're on checking it out at The Crew Radio Show. If you're listening, we need you to go to the YouTube channel.
Yes.
And we need you to like it.
Yes.
We need you to subscribe to it.
Yes.
So you can have content whenever you want to check it out.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah, we got Sia in the house today. Miss Sia.
Yeah.
Miss Sia,
hello.
How are you?
Hello, Reverend.
If y'all only knew. If y'all only knew. And we got Ton in the house today. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
You good?
It's a good day.
You sure?
I'm positive.
Okay.
You gonna find out.
and last but not least, behind the camera, producer extraordinaire Jason Covington. How are you today, sir?
God bless you. God bless you.
Oh, you in that mode today?
Yes, we thank God for who you are.
He ready to do the sign of the cross.
I can't tell if he a worship minister or actually a preacher. We trying to figure out which side you on.
What you have to do is just be in the spirit, and when you flow with the spirit, the Bible says those who worship must worship in spirit.
Spirit and truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. Okay.
Hold on, I can tell. You got the oil on you?
Yeah, all the time.
What kind?
Wait, hold on.
Because that's going into the show.
Wait.
What kind of oil you got? What kind
That
of
was
oil?
a part of our show. Okay.
The oil I have is Pompeian, the one you get from the grocery store.
I'm talking about holy oil.
Yeah, holy oil.
You ain't say that, Todd. That's not the question you asked.
We
Have to be
you got to be
specific.
specific.
Did he have oil?
Okay, so that's the problem in our society because now oil has taken on, even in the church, a different connotation,
Yes.
and that is sad. And we're gonna talk about it today.
But because of the show we doing today, when you say oil, I'm not on the camera. We gotta be specific. We ain't talking about baby oil. We talking about Pompeian that you get from the grocery store that they use.
Blessed oil.
The blessed oil, not the
Now
baby
the people
oil.
can hear you; they can't see you.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
but
It'll be a picture.
Your forehead is greasy.
Yep,
but let's go ahead on and talk about the show. Let's go ahead and talk about the show because it is.
Wow.
We're gonna talk about Diddy today, right? We're gonna talk about it. People been asking us, "Yo, when y'all gonna talk about Diddy?"
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it now.
Today.
And so we got to go more in depth.
Is that the trigger warning? Because we are going to have to address some things that for those that are survivors of sexual assault, sexual harassment, this is not going to be an easy conversation. And I do want to say we might make each other laugh, but we know that this is not a laughing matter.
Correct.
And
Not
so
at all.
please know that up front. But we're going to try and do what we can do to make this entertaining as well.
Okay. All right. All I want to say, first of all, is you owe me an apology.
Okay.
A public apology, because I told you so back in January. I said this was going to blow up. I said it was going to be like the Bill Cosby, people coming out the woodwork, Harvey Weinstein, people coming out the woodwork. I said it was coming. And I said this at the end of the show. I said the interesting part is wait till the guys come out. And you said, no, ain't no man coming out, ain't no man coming. And I said, they coming. I said, they coming, and they did.
They did. So
They did explosively. They did.
And we're going to talk about that.
Okay, all right.
But in the context of that conversation and that show, most of the people at that time were coming out civilly, if you remember, right? And I said, I want to see when he is criminally charged. And at that point, I did not believe because of his power and influence.
You was doubting Thomas.
Yeah, I didn't believe.
You was doubting Thomas. And I said
previous history.
Right.
You were
Because
doubting
most people
Thomas.
don't get criminally charged.
When I read that indictment by Cassie, I said, nah, that brother, they coming for him. I said indictment because truthfully, the indictment that just got dropped, a great portion of it is based on what happened to her. Yeah. So they have been looking at him for quite some time, and they modeled a great number of what she put down in her lawsuit, by the way, which was settled within
24 hours.
24 hours.
And it was a civil suit
for $30 million.
It was a civil suit.
Who struck a check for $30 million in 24 hours?
Well,
A
listen,
guilty person.
Right.
Probably.
But at the time, again, it was civil. And now let's also add it was the feds that was investigating him. And when the feds get involved, obviously they're going to do what they got to do to have a criminal charge.
Yeah, but I told you when Rodney, when that dude came out,
Was it the
Rodney
bodyguard?
Lil Rod Jones, when he came out in March 25th, way back, three months in, I said, that has racketeer RICO all over. I said the feds are taking notes. He waved red meat in front of the feds, and they said, "Oh, we got him now."
All right. Well, let's talk about it.
Oh, let's talk about it.
So, again, for those who don't know, and you might know that Diddy's been arrested. He's currently in jail in Brooklyn without bond, but he's facing serious legal issues. Correct, Tom?
He is.
He was arrested on September 16th of this year, facing racketeering,
Yes.
sex trafficking,
Yes.
and transportation to engage in prostitution.
Yes.
Now, break it down like us on Sanford and Son. You know, we don't know what you're talking about here. So tell us what's happening. You know, say.
I was trying to come up
Smitty
with.
and Hoppy. You know how.
I don't know none of that, so I was trying
You
to
don't
come
know
up
Sanford
with.
and Son.
So
You don't know Sanford and Son.
Hoppy would say something, and then he would say
Then he
it
would
all
look at-
proper,
right.
And then they would look at Smitty,
Right.
And Smitty would break it down for you.
That's what we need. Come
That's
on.
what you need. Okay,
Come
I'm
on.
Smitty.
Yeah. Break it down for
All
us.
right. So racketeering, or RICO, as most people know it.
Rico Jenkins.
No, RICO, the statute that was codified in 1970s by the U.S. Code,
Okay.
is Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act.
Okay.
That's how you get RICO.
All right.
And RICO basically is there is a criminal enterprise, an organization that is doing illegal acts in order to promote or maintain that criminal enterprise. And it can be a variety of charges, like in the indictment with Diddy, is bribery, is arson, is kidnapping, is he was beating people up. And so you had a variety of stuff that they said he did in order to maintain or promote his criminal enterprise. Then,
So stop right
Wait.
there.
Okay.
That's what we got to ask. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so prior to Diddy and that one other rapper more recently, right? Typically, what kinds of activities and what kinds of organizations were catching the RICO charges? Because wasn't it like
Mob.
gangs and mobs,
Mobs.
right? Okay.
Yeah, like for instance, the RICO Act, really, when you think about RICO, you should be thinking of the Gambino family in New York, or the famous mobster from Chicago. I can't remember his name, Al Capone. People like that. That's what that RICO Act was intended for. People like
Right.
that.
And the only reason why I say that is because those examples right there help people understand. Because when you have people that are explicit about their connections, right? We hang out together, we're wearing the same kinds of clothes, we speak the same kinds of ways. It's real easy to point out, oh, they working together. This isn't exactly that. And so this is kind of a new legal frontier for some of us that are starting to pay attention.
And I think, yes, so with that, the word enterprise, I think, is what's catching some people.
It's just organization.
Right.
But
That's all.
But even in that, like organization, like people might think, is this associated with his business practices, his record label?
Well, they do name
who's
those
connected?
business. They name Bad Boy Records. They name all Comb Industries. They name all of Enterprises. They name all of his different business entities that he has built up that was at one point amassing over $1 billion in net worth. They named quite a number of them. Because what they're saying is, it wasn't just he was in the business of music making. He was also in the business of lifestyle. Because remember, he was selling the liquor and all types of.
Yeah,
so
his
he
own
had
clothing
a
line.
lifestyle, right? And so they were saying all of these things came together to produce this lifestyle and this enterprise. And it became an enterprise because, unfortunately, there were criminal activities that were taking place to promote this lifestyle. That's where we get the freak offs. That's where we get him allegedly blowing up someone's car who was a competitor of a love interest. And so you have different things that were mob-like because, his father actually, it is stated that his father may have worked for a really famous mobster, the young man that well, I shouldn't say young man, but the black famous mobster from New York that Denzel Washington played. What they say, his father did that when he was a little kid, and so he has a lot of things that they're mentioning in this indictment has a lot of mob type feel to it.
All right, so that's one charge, though, right?
Yes, it is, and that carries life.
And also with that, so as people are listening, but you don't have to have been an employee of the business or anything like that in order to be affiliated with the type of activities within the organization. It could be a loosely associated organization as well, right?
Any conspirator, a conspirator is someone who assists, aids, encourages an individual to commit a crime.
That's going to be important as we continue on this conversation.
Because I think again,
Any person.
Right.
all right.
Okay. All right.
So that's one.
That's
Racketeering.
one.
Sex trafficking. Talk
Sex trafficking. Old boy was bringing they are alleging he was bringing prostitutes from across state lines, and he was forcing them to, well, not forcing them, but he was paying them to engage in behavior, sexual acts with, now, this is what they said in the indictment, and I thought it was interesting. They said with female victims and other individuals. So who are the other individuals? Because he said, if you're not a female, you're what?
You're male.
Okay.
But also you could be a female that wasn't a victim because you were there on your own.
Right.
Of your own accord.
Right. But it says female victims and other individuals were being forced to do these things. So I was wondering, they carefully worded it. I'm like, why they word it that way? Who are the other individuals? Inquiring mind wants to know. But I'm like, who are the other individuals? Because if you're not female, then are they saying they were transgender or non-binary or non-binary or men or, you know, who are they? So they didn't say though.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's category 2.
That's category 2.
How many years?
That carries up to life.
So that's up to life in both of these charges.
Yes,
so
and that one has a 15 mandatory minimum.
All right. And then transportation to engage in prostitution
is what it is. You brought somebody across state lines. So some of the things that he's been charged with, the same act is a violation of multiple statutes.
And so that's how somebody might be able to rack up so many charges from one crime.
Correct. So like, for instance, if a person robs you and they have a gun in their hand, well, guess what? You're going to get charged with robbery, but you're also going to get charged with UFA. It was the same act, but it violated multiple statutes. UFA is use of a firearm in the commission of an inherently violent felony.
Help us out, Smitty. All right, help us out. All right, so with that, all right, so...
and that carries 10 years.
So we got life, and up to 10.
And a minimal mandatory sentence of 15 within one of those lives.
And when they're charging, they can charge per... I mean, when you're talking about the years can add up.
Yes,
so you can end up with 2 life terms.
Yes, I've done as many as 4 life terms. And somebody said, why so many? I said, because if he die, resurrect him and bring him back to my prison because you did bad and you got to suffer for it. So there it is. I said it.
Yes, you did say it.
And he alone.
All right. So
you know what he did?
No. I know.
Okay. All right.
But the mandatory minimum conversation, just real quick, because I know we're going to talk about heinous things, which is really important because I think people's emotions about these types of crimes play into the conversations. But to be very clear, a mandatory minimum is the amount of time that the least amount of time that someone has to serve for this crime if they are convicted that is in statute. The judge has no choice but to at least give that as the minimum. So just want to make sure that people understand mandatory minimums because that comes up in legislative conversations as well.
Very good. Okay. Now let's play the other side of radio.
Oh, Lord.
What is the other side of human trafficking?
I don't know the other side of human trafficking, but I'm going to let him tell us, please.
So help me if I'm wrong. And I'm not saying that I agree with this side.
Okay.
I'm making it
That's
interesting.
A very good clarification.
Just for radio.
I do not agree.
It's just for radio.
But the freak-offs is the main crux of it.
Is.
It is, right?
It is.
And so Diddy was known for these freak-off parties.
He
right?
was.
And a lot of people knew that if you go to these parties at a certain time, the party shifts and stuff starts to change, right? So the defense is saying, well, if you knew that you were going to this party and you knew the things that were happening at these parties, And then you knew that at a certain time the party takes a change and you still stay there. Are you consenting to what's going to happen in that situation?
You cannot consent to being raped. You cannot consent to being drugged. You cannot consent to someone threatening to hurt you or do bodily harm. You can't consent to those things. And so we can't just take this indictment in itself, by itself. Mm-hmm. We have to look at the totality of these different charges that have been coming towards him, being levied on him in these lawsuits. And the one I think is the most egregious is definitely the one that I mentioned earlier, which is the one filed March 25th, 2024 by Rodney Lil Rod Jones. He was a former producer and videographer, and he was really an assistant to Diddy. And in that lawsuit was very, very lengthy. In that lawsuit, he stated, if you went to a Diddy party, there were two separate types of alcohol. Mm-hmm. There was the bottles that were for Diddy and for workers like his employees and people that he specifically wanted to make sure they got those bottles. But there was another set of alcohol or bottles that had been primed or laced with ecstasy. Ecstasy was laced with the date rape drug that was laced with what is it called? Ketamine. Yeah, ketamine was laced. That's like a date rape drug. Mm-hmm. So these bottles were laced.
Tranquilizer.
Yeah, they're like tranquilizers. Yeah. Yep. So he was allegedly lacing those bottles with those things. So when people were getting poured champagne or liquor or whatever from these bottles, they thinking, okay, it's coming from a bottle. It's just a regular bottle of alcohol, but did not know that it had been laced with some type of tranquilizer or some type of drug that would take you out. So meanwhile, at some point, you're going to start feeling the effect of it. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking somebody is helping you maybe to your car or helping you to the bathroom because you're not feeling well, or say, why don't you lay down for a minute, and taking you to a room. And you know how it goes when those things take place. At that point now, you are isolated from the party. You can't consent to being under the influence. Matter of fact, Virginia statute deals with that.
Yeah. Fair enough. You can't consent to anything if you're knocked out.
Correct.
Right. So in that, there's somebody that's going to be watching this and listening, and they're going to say, you know what, it sounds like a college party.
No.
It sounds like where you go and you got a punch bowl, and the punch bowl is spiked, and you know to be careful because you teach your kids don't be drinking out of everything.
You do.
And you make sure you make sure that you don't drink. So there are people that's going to be listening to this that's going to say, well, what's the difference, right? Why are you ingesting something that you don't know where it's coming from? You don't know who gave it to you. And I'm not blaming the victim. You understand what I'm saying?
But we're addressing the potential concern.
Because there are people who are watching that's going to say, well, what's the difference between this and a frat party?
Because here's the thing. If you do ingest something, even if you ingested something, you have absolutely no idea what's in that bottle or in that punch bowl or whatever, you still cannot consent when you are under the influence to the point where you don't even know what's going on. Right. That's how we see some of these college football players and basketball players going to prison for rape, because they're having sex with someone that is totally knocked out, and then the fool has the gall, the audacity to film it and send it to his teammates and his friends, and then they sharing it all over social media. And so the girl finds out because she sees it on social media. One of her girlfriends may say, do you know there's a video of you circulating all over social media? And so that's how she finds out. She's clearly knocked out. You can't consent when you're knocked out. Right. So that's exhibit 1 right there. That's all I need right there. I don't need no more.
And I also want to say this too. Not all fraternities, right? So there are some amazing fraternities and sororities. So this is not an indictment of...
And not trying to
that life,
stereotype.
right? And we're not stereotyping because this happens white, black, Hispanic, right? But there's this idea as well that at some of the college parties, you know to BYOB if you're old enough. And so that leaves the youngest and the freshest at the parties to not have learned their lesson yet. So you don't even know, like, if you were to say something like you said, somebody out there is listening to that, then that assumes that unless you prepare yourself in your life for every single one of the possible things that might happen to me at this thing, then it's my fault. And the implications of that are that some of these 18-year-olds, whether they're drinking underage, I get it, they shouldn't be doing that, but they might be coming in thinking, okay, I'm consenting to a good time. They're not coming into, I might get HIV/AIDS or, some pregnancy or trauma because my body is different and I don't understand what happened, but also the trauma that someone has to go through when they go to get a rape kit and they are badgered by people to answer questions that they cannot answer because they were passed out. So like this entire thing of like, and we can get into a lot of the, whether it's intentional or not intentional, but the victim blaming that happens even in questions like that, where like, so if I came to this event, I had my own cup, I had my own liquor, I didn't even touch that, and somebody walked by and dropped a pill into my drink, that is the same effect. If I did not say, please give me one of your pills, right, then you're not consenting to it.
Right.
So, and by removing that consent, you're taking responsibility for something that you never asked for.
And let's just make it just extremely very, very, very clear. In many of these cases, it's not typically just the one person.
Right.
They normally pass that person around. And so that person typically is just being gang raped.
And
yes,
in some of the stories that may not be part of the indictment yet because we know more stuff is coming.
Correct.
The embarrassment after
Shame.
Finding out that you are on tape being gang raped by several individuals
that you don't even know.
Celebrating the fact that it happened. You might be a part of a community where you would be forever shunned if that video got out. That is a tool that then becomes used in order to get you to do things that you didn't want to do.
So that was in the indictment.
So in that, so now you bring the prostitutes in, right? That were high. So are you saying then, okay, the party's going on, there's laced drugs in the alcohol, passing out, people are passing out. Now the prostitute comes in and engage in sexual acts against the will of the person. Is that, in a nutshell, what this is?
Well, the prostitutes is one part of it.
Right.
Because the things that are being said and alleged through not just this indictment, but as you know, there's now been an explosive press conference by this attorney in Dallas that has stated that he has more than 120 victims who are coming forth within the month, and they are going to release an explosive a lawsuit against Diddy, and they are going to be naming names of high-profile accomplices and conspirators who engage in sexual assaults and all types of things that's along that line of sexual assault and human trafficking, sex trafficking, and things of that nature. So
some of the prostitutes were there to allegedly we got to keep saying allegedly there to bring out the sex vibe, right? So you had some people, like let's say for instance, there were some men that were having sex with prostitutes. There was no drugs involved in that, right? But then you have literal people where they were trying to break out into the industry. They were potential hires or potential signers of the contract that were then being harmed by Diddy's friends. There's no prostitute in that exchange. So not all of the rape or the assaults were happening by the prostitutes. This is multiple crimes happening in the same party.
Multiple crimes.
Yeah.
So that just to be clear that it wasn't the imported people that were doing the things or the ones that were always being hurt too.
Like for instance, again, referencing the Jones lawsuit, he said you had people like Cuba Gooding Jr. that was trying to take his goods. And so, it's not just the prostitutes and whatever, it's high profile friends of Diddy that they are alleged. And I'm going to tell you this, you heard it here. You heard it here. I'm telling you right now, the word on the street is that the next person that's about to get blown up is going to be Jay-Z.
Oh, yeah. There's
You
so
heard
many
it here.
roads to lead
I'm
to.
just telling you right
Can
now.
I say one more
That's
thing?
the word on the street.
And one more thing. Remember that conversation that we were having a little while back about the person that was charging for sexual relations
Yes.
was being violated,
Yes.
right? Or did not want to have a certain type of sex, ended up having that certain type of sex, received the payment, but did not press the charges
Yes.
on the unwanted sexual activity until she found out the money was counterfeit, right?
Correct.
There are elements of that conversation. So if y'all didn't hear that one, y'all got to go back and watch it. There are elements of this conversation too, because some of the people that were brought to have sex, they were being paid to have sex, were also violated. And that conversation of, can a prostitute be raped? Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. No question.
But that is not. Remember, we are still having to answer in some political circles the answer of, can a husband rape a wife?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, because people just do not understand the idea of consent.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring that back to one of our previous conversations where it's like, even the people that he was bringing into the party, if you have a contract that I'm coming in to do X, Y, and Z, and then you drug me and I end up having to do A, B, and C because I'm not able to make my own decisions, that's still a crime.
That's correct.
And there's still going to be some people, that's why we're playing the other side, that's going to look at this and would say, well, Ton and Sia, what's the difference between this and bless his soul, Hugh Hefner and the parties that he was having and the Playboy Mansion and drugs all over the place and people doing all kinds of sex stuff at these parties and having a good time and it does not appear that there was any harm done in situations that in their mind appear very similar. You go into a party, you know it's going to be freaky, you know it's going to be sex stuff going on. Mm-hmm. What's the difference?
There was none.
Well, I would just say a slight caveat. If you got a bowl of drugs out there that says take one if you wish, versus dropping it into my drink, that is a difference.
There is a difference. However, like
the stuff that was going on.
The stuff that was going on, like that they're mentioning concerning dropping and stuff into your drinks. There were allegations that Bill Cosby did that at Hugh Hefner Mansion. Right. And so no, there to a certain degree, I should say that maybe, there was none. The problem is a lot of that took place back in the 60s and the 70s. You know, remember
that was
Hugh
before
Hefner,
Rico, right?
Yeah, that was before Rico even came out. So, the 60s and the 70s and in the 80s, because by the 80s, Hugh Hefner was a very, very old man. And
he was still having parties.
He was still having parties, but that lifestyle was still somewhat very taboo and nobody was speaking about it. It really wasn't up until the mid 2000s, like maybe 2015, 16, somewhere in that neighborhood, that the Me Too movement came out and started exposing stuff.
And that's when you think it changed.
I do, because even the former what was her name? Last name Jones, the former member of the Pussycat Dolls group, the singing group, she started talking about some of her stuff in 2017, but had happened in 2004, 2005, 2006. So even early 2000s, it was still not being talked about as much. But even when she spoke out in 2017, because of that, she was shunned. That taboo, and it was fear of the power, retaliation, but it was also, why are you talking about this? Like, and that sense of secrecy.
Then you got black people out here, right? If you going for Diddy, why didn't you go after Hef? Why didn't you go after the stuff that he did? Because if you're telling me it's the same stuff,
it's the same.
Then what's the difference?
It's a different legal framework.
Well, first of all, Hefner's dead.
He is dead.
I can't go for him. And so, but guess what? If I could,
but why are people filing charges? Why didn't the Fed step in? You know what I'm saying? Like the same.
I can't speak for why the Feds did or did not file charges. Like people would say, why you go after R. Kelly? Well,
that's minors.
Well, yeah, but still, he's still a sexual predator.
There's Matt Gaetz.
Right. And then here's the thing. People are saying, there is rumored and alleged that what he did to Aaliyah, Jay-Z may have done to Beyonce when she was a minor. That has been alleged. That is what's on the streets right now.
But I also think in previous conversations and previous life experience, if you have a white person jaywalking and a black person jaywalking, the cop don't have to give you a reason as to why he stopped you for jaywalking.
Yeah, you were jaywalking.
It doesn't have to be a reason. We know that systems in this country are often built on a lens of racism, one way, shape, or form or another. And it's like, I just want to preemptively say to anyone that has that thought, because I've heard it the other way, that you went after Cosby, but you didn't go after. So the answer to that is to go after everybody that is breaking the law, not to not go after the black people that are doing harm to our own community.
Correct.
Hey, we're halfway through the show. Big shout out to everyone tuning in. Thank you all so much. If you're loving the content, consider supporting us by becoming a sponsor. Just contact us via email at thecrewradioshow757@gmail.com. Now stick around, we've got even more good stuff coming your way.
That you went after Cosby, but you didn't go after. So the answer to that is to go after everybody that is breaking the law, not to not go after the black people that are doing harm to our own communities.
Correct.
Just want to clarify that because there's somebody out there.
Somebody's going to say it.
And let's say this too. They didn't go after Bill Cosby until Bill Cosby wanted to buy NBC.
Well, that's true.
Correct.
And so, but that was still in 2018?
That was still early
2019
compared to all this stuff.
Right. I think Hefner was gone by then.
Well, that, and you also have, people that are trying to elevate in power structure. So you have somebody that's running for president that has been found liable for sexual assault.
Rape.
Right. Okay.
Call it what it is.
So we are now discussing rape and sexual assault in public on this show, on the news, on all of the cable channels, on regular dinner time. It is way more out front in your face than it was pre-pandemic. Just period. And I'm not saying it was connected to the to the pandemic, but just saying since even 2018, 2017.
It was taboo.
And it is because, in my estimation, we're having to, because there are household names, Diddy, R. Kelly, all of these people, they're household names, person running for president, right? There are household names that we were talking about. And if you are not also talking about the fact that they are potential rapists, you are doing a disservice and normalizing this behavior. So I'm actually okay with the fact that we're talking about it now more, because we're also talking about consent more. We're also talking about how not to break the law. We're also talking about how you can hit on somebody without being an absolute jerk, right? We're talking about it now more. And I think we're going to literally save lives because we're talking about it more.
Yeah, I agree. And on a serious note, because I know I've been playing the other side, there was one disturbing part of the indictment that we haven't talked about, and that's the fact everybody gets caught up in the baby oil, right? And I had to preach this one Sunday to the congregation. Y'all got caught up, y'all got all kinds of memes of the baby oil. Nobody is talking about the IVs.
That's the part that got me.
Nobody is talking about the fact
that's the part that got me.
Diddy allegedly at these parts had IVs brought in because the amount of sexual activity in these freak-offs would last for days. And the victims were so dehydrated from the sexual activity that they had to get IVs to get energized enough again to continue with the sexual activity. And everybody's just pointing to the baby oil, but really, I mean, that shows you the level of depravity that we're seeing in this indictment that nobody's talking about.
And the level of organization, because guess who can't just go run into CVS and get an IV bag? Nobody can just run into. You got to have people.
But the indictment talks about employees.
But that's what I'm saying.
Associates.
So when we're talking about organization, when we're talking about RICO charges, the average person is not going into CVS to get an IV bag. No. This is coordination amongst many levels. And then you look at like Matthew Perry, who died from his addiction to ketamine, and his providers of the drug that can be potentially used for healthy things in very small doses were the ones that were preying on him. Like, you got to have people in very many different positions in order to carry out some of the things that he is being alleged to have done.
They were bringing in the IVs. They were bringing in the drugs. They were bringing in the alcohol. They were bringing in the baby oil and the lubricants. He was known to carry guns. And so that intimidating factor alone, so you got the security, you got the employees that they know that he's doing these things, and they are afraid that they're going to snitch on them and say, you're trying to leave. Like when people try to leave, they were either coerced by threats or coerced by bodily harm. We saw the video of Cassie running out of the hotel room, getting to the elevator didn't come quick enough, and he as in Diddy, runs down the hallway, barely clothed in a towel, and he beats her like you would beat a dude on the street, kicking her in the face, kicking her in her stomach and her chest. He's just beating her, punching her, and throwing things at her. Picked up a vase and threw it at her, and then dragged her back to the hotel room. And in the indictment is saying how it took these victims sometimes days and weeks before the injury that they suffered from his attack to heal, and he will keep them. That's what the kidnapping came in, because he will hold them up in either hotel rooms or at his mansion and would not let them go until they fully healed, because they were also celebrities, and he didn't want the press to be asking them, where did you get that bruise? Where did you get that mark? How did you do that to yourself? And so these things are now coming out, and the video, which, by the way, when it occurred, the indictment stated that he tried to pay off the security to make sure that the video went away. Now, how that video all of a sudden surfaced, right, I don't know, because no one is saying how it all of a sudden surfaced. All we know is it surfaced out of nowhere, and this is the guy that initially said, Cassie's lying, I didn't do anything, and now you settle within 24 hours, and on top of that, now the video comes out and shows what kind of a monster you really are.
And then when you look at some of the commentary from there was an article that was speaking about behavioral health and mental health professionals looking at it not just from his perspective but from hers. And there was a comment that was made by one of the professionals that as she balled up and played dead, then you could tell this was not by any imagination that this was the first time that it happened, because she had started to learn his tics and things, and so she had to play dead in order to survive the event, right? And so some people, well, why she ain't fight back? Why she ain't fight? She was trying to survive.
She was trying to survive.
And all kinds of questions about her mental state and how she stayed. But I don't hear those same people asking about if you need an IV to respond to something that has happened. Like, why is nobody talking
about that?
It's called sociopath.
And because they were drugged up to the point where they couldn't really resist, he kept it going.
He kept it going
for days. And so
allegedly.
Let's widen this out, because we also know that when this show comes out, it's in October.
Yeah.
And October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
It is.
Right? And I think this is something in our community that we don't talk about.
We don't. It's taboo.
Right? No. It is very taboo, and we keep it under the table. And I believe that the no snitching rule started in the home because of this stuff.
I agree.
Yeah. Now, Ton, listen, you see it all day, every day. Talk about it, man. What do you see on a consistent basis?
We have a docket called the DV docket, or the domestic violence docket, and it's once a week. And it's 2 dockets, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. It is not unusual for that docket to have 30 plus cases on each docket. And that is 30 plus cases of someone claiming that someone hit them, beat them, spat on them, punched them. I remember in Portsmouth, I did a case where an old man, he wasn't no young man, he was an old man, took a brick, the type of brick that you would see off your house, outside your house, took a brick and hit his wife with the brick, and she had to get stitches. And guess what? She wanted to drop those charges.
So this is what the underlying piece of ours, the psychological trauma that I see as a pastor that in our community we are not addressing. So how can a community heal if this is the type of stuff? And let's just be honest here, when COVID hit, all this stuff escalated.
Because you're stuck in the house.
Because you're stuck in the house and you had to deal with all this trauma. 6 out of 10 women across racial lines will be impacted by domestic violence in their lifetime.
Yes.
We know anything that's a national trend is higher in the Black community. Yes. So if you're telling me it's 6 out of 10 nationally, there's got to be 7 or 8 in the Black community.
And I think that's bearing out, right? And I think one of the things that for me as a woman that knows a lot of guys, right? Like I know a bunch of well-meaning, well-to-do men that are absolutely silent on this topic, and that is who I want to pull into the conversation.
Why do you think?
But this is what I'm going to say. So like, it is easier to just mind your own business, right? It is. Because I have had that friend that was in a relationship, you intervene on their behalf, and then that friend get mad at you, right? Like that, there's nothing convenient or easy about entering into a situation where violence like this is part of, right? So you're risking friendships, you're risking all kinds of things. But if we don't have more men who are not beating other people to step in and help shift this conversation. And I'm not always talking about when it's happening right at the moment, but there are potential bills and legislation that would be removing teaching about consent and domestic violence that are being passed in Florida right now, right? So the idea of sex ed and family life education is more than about sex and abortion. It covers consent, it covers healthy relationships, it covers self-esteem, it covers all of that. So when some people are going in and attacking these sex ed curriculums and pulling out consent and pulling out being able to talk about domestic violence, you are crippling the next generation from being able to know how to break a generational curse. There are only to date that I have seen women who are a part of fighting those bills in order to keep it in the curriculum. What would it mean for men to join into that fight? Now, that's not just Florida. It's happening all around. And I 100% think it would happen in Virginia. But people know that the current composition of the General Assembly, that bill is going nowhere, right? But it's this idea that it is the women's job to fix the women's issues that I encounter so much. There's an expectation that domestic violence legislation will be carried by women. There's an expectation that domestic violence champions will be women that have been abused. More often than not, the most dangerous part of a woman's life is when she is coming out of an abusive situation, meaning literally moving from the home, right? That is the most dangerous point in your life. I am not going to be expecting her to be the one to speak out in October, right? It is the person that is hearing the sound of our voice, who has a beautiful and wonderful upbringing, a beautiful and wonderful loving relationship with your significant other, that we need more of those people who have not been particularly in that traumatic situation to say, you know what, I'm going to tap into this issue. Now, you might have to learn the talking points, you might have to learn the stats and everything, but lending your voice to this, because when I have heard guys say why they don't speak up, is they don't want to be the one that's like, you know, bringing down the fun in the barber shop or the locker room when the jokes and stuff come. But no, y'all are not old, but y'all are older than the guys that are telling me this.
That's still foolishness.
But here's the thing. If you are not secure in your own personhood, whether it be manhood or womanhood, if you're not secure enough to know that you can stand up against the crowd to speak out, if you haven't built up your kids to be secure enough to that, then we're not going to have any bystanders that are upstanders.
Can I tell you what I think it is?
What's that?
What I think it is they've seen it in their family.
Yes.
From an uncle, cousin, daddy, whomever, brother. And as a result of that, to judge someone else on the street would be judging a family member or a very close friend. That's what the problem is. The problem is not just, oh, I'm good, I'm not doing it, and I don't want to bring down the fun. When you speak over someone concerning that issue and you are criticizing or being critical of someone that's doing that thing, then you got to shine that light on yourself. Absolutely. You got to shine that light on your own home, and you got to say to yourself, well, what am I doing that is abusive in nature? What am I doing that is, that have I ever hit a girl? Have I ever, if it's a female, have I ever hit a male? You have to say those things, and you have to, when it's just you in that mirror, you got to be honest about that. And because you know that you can't really say that definitively, then it does make it harder for you to be able to say something. And I'm gonna tell you, growing up in the hood, I'll never forget this one particular incident where there was a young man who was a nice guy in the hood. You know, his family, they were fighters, but he was the nice kid. He was the nice brother, the nice sibling. And he saw a man beating a woman, and he intervened, and that man stabbed him to death. And his name was Clarence. I'll never forget that, as I was a young teenager. And I'll never forget how that was so explosive in the hood because he was the nice guy. And even though, like I said, his family were rough, but he was the nice guy. And he was just trying to keep her from being abused further. That guy stabbed him. Now, that guy disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. But like I said, he came from a rough neighborhood.
The one who stabbed him.
The one who stabbed him disappeared.
Yeah.
They took care of him.
They took care of him.
Yeah.
They took care of him in the hood.
So I'm not, let me be very clear. I'm not saying in the moment this stuff is going down, jump in and be the captain or nothing. But when like I've seen videos when the dudes were punching women in New York. Like, do y'all remember that when like they were just going around and just punching random people? There were more jokes that I saw from men sharing memes and things than people that would stand up. But the ignorance is more prevalent in social media and the algorithm, and that is what gets in front of us as opposed to the number of people that could be using their platforms. I mean, just put up a purple ribbon once this month. Like, just start out something small. But I do not see enough straight, cisgendered men standing up against this actual cause for me to feel like we're going to make any headway. But just the women cannot be the only ones that are carrying this struggle.
Now, I agree with that. Now, I got two questions I want to ask you, see, and maybe both of you. First question is, why do we limit it and talk about domestic violence only in physical terms? Mm-hmm. Because most of the time, that's what we do. It's the bruise, it's the beating. But you just mentioned there was a court. Man, if somebody spit on me, man, right? Look, that ain't, you're not physically touched, but that,
I'm going to jail.
Yeah, that's more degrading to me than you putting your hands on me. So why do we limit it to just physicality?
And it goes both ways.
It does.
And I'm gonna come back to that. That's my second question. So hold on, that's my second question.
And to me, the same answer is connected. If I can't even get people to stand up and say, this big man punching this little woman is wrong, then anything after that is like, why even bring it up? Why bring up the emotional violence that can't be seen, where I don't have scars, that every time somebody says something about it, they are victim blamed? Why bring up the situation when the man is the one that is actually being abused and nobody believes him because men can't be abused by women, right? Why even bring up any of these other things if we can't even get the community to stand up and say, yeah, that was wrong?
Well, you have people here that's standing up and saying it's wrong. But I think the question is,
I'm just saying, and more.
But what's the next step, though? See, like after you say it's wrong, right? There still has to be
a plan,
a
strategy
to get the person out of the situation.
Yes.
And we know that financial is a large part of this,
Yes.
right? Where you gonna go? How you gonna take care of yourself? You might have kids, right? It's layered.
And there are so many amazing resources. And I'll just say transitions.
Yes.
Transitions Family Violence Services. There's
Samaritan House.
And then many of these other organizations that are not out there because they do need to be quiet, and it's kind of more word of mouth.
Correct.
So like if you see somebody coming into a shelter, then they have those underground resources. But Transitions is one, and the team over there is amazing. They are out there. They're out front. They're at every single community event. And you know, by the time y'all are seeing this, there a lot of their awareness events would have passed. But you don't have to just go get awareness during October, right? But a lot of it, if you're not willing to actually do the work, or if there's some extenuating circumstances, that's why you can't, write them a check. Mm-hmm. Write a check to the people that are willing to do the work. But that's
where we need to start.
And I really do, because they have the plan, they have the people, they have the thing, but oftentimes they don't have the budget that matches the need. So they take great care of the families that they can.
Yeah.
But they could probably use an extra $1 million in order to meet the need of our region.
Agreed, because there's too many in the community to meet the demand. So yes, and maybe we'll put it in the chat where people can go. Now, my second question to you, see, is to your point, Tom, how come this conversation usually is the narrative of a man attacking a woman, and not always the other way around, where we know that there are women who domestic violence against men.
Absolutely.
And even in other relationships, there are women attacking women. There are men attacking men. Absolutely. How come we don't have those type of conversations to widen this out to?
And let me be the first to apologize that I play a part in that sometimes, but it is for the exact reason that I just said. It is very hard for me to get into a conversation about a lesbian on lesbian domestic violence situation if I already can't get a heteronormative society to care about heteronormative violence, right? It's just, to me, if the most prevalent one isn't getting addressed, it's hard to think that the most marginalized ones will get addressed. And I did not mean to play into that by jumping to that example, but I do believe... But that
is kind of the thought process,
I do,
right?
I believe there are even survivors who have not come forward sooner because they don't believe that they're going to be believed, because they're watching the men who are the straight men who are beating the straight women not get addressed. So why am I even going to put myself out there if I don't feel like there? But let me also say that justice is justice, and justice needs to happen. So then this is where the culture shift happens. This is why it took so long for Diddy for as many people. If Cassie had not come forward, we would not be where we are today. Mm-hmm. So what we are in this current model.
Hold on, let me.
But wait, let me just...
Can I touch on that?
Let me just say for this part, if we are waiting for the woman who is willing to put her life on the line to be the spark that gets the domestic violence or the sexual assault, the Me Too moments, if we're always waiting for the one that is most impacted by the thing to be the one to stand up against the thing, we're going to keep repeating these cycles.
Yeah, and I remember us having this conversation before, and that's why on that, when you came earlier on the show and said you were right about the criminal versus civil, because I remember that conversation, yes. And you said most people go civilly because there's a lower bar to prove.
Correct.
Yes. Right? So for me, it wasn't that Cassie just came forward. It was the fact that he settled so quickly, to me, that then gave others the thought, okay, well, if he's doing it like that and he basically is settling for however many millions civilly, that could potentially open up the others to have courage. If Diddy would have won that case, I don't believe as many would have come out.
But I don't think he would have won it. And the reason I don't think he
didn't win it.
Right. I never thought he was going to win that case. I always thought that case was going to be settled because...
The hotel video proved that.
Oh, yeah. And there have been far too many others who he knew his bones. If nobody else knew his bones, he knew his bones. And he knew the longer that case was out there, the more of a potential that we had for others to not only validate what she is saying, but come alongside and say, not only did you do it to her, but you did it to me, now give me mine too.
That's my point.
That's
my point.
But I think that is... in my brain, that is furthering what I'm saying. If you're always waiting for a Cassie, and not only does it have to be a Cassie, it has to be a petite, light-skinned, long hair, like sympathetic figure who wins $30 million in order for people to get justice, then that you're kind of undergirding my point, where if I'm a big dude that is experiencing violence from a short woman and I'm not sure how it's going to look in the public, and I'm not speaking up because I can't even visualize how the regular people get justice. That is the point. It took all of that for Diddy to now be crashing down.
Yeah, but here's the thing. In that scenario, unfortunately, it had to be a victim to come forth for Diddy. Not in domestic violence advocacy, but just in that particular situation. I'm going to tell you why. People have been saying for years that Diddy had been doing these things. Jaguar Wright, she had been saying for years, had been calling him out about a variety of stuff, and others had been calling him out. Just like R. Kelly, people have been calling him out. And the people were like, oh, they're just mad because he fired them. Or they're just mad because he won't give them money. They're just trying to extort this. But it had to take a live person to say, no, he did this to me. This is not something that they're making up. There's an actual person.
And not only that, but she didn't get killed for it.
And she didn't get killed for it.
And she won.
And she won.
And that to me, and I know what you're saying, because why does it have to take all of that to happen?
And if you have all of these people who are a part of a RICO charge, which means not only did they know what was going on, they took part in helping it happen, and none of them came forward. Like, just understanding what it takes for the average person to stand up and say, this is happening to me, and I know I'm going to be victim shamed, and I know you're going to go through my whole past, but I'm willing to stand up to that scrutiny because we need justice. If we have to wait for that every single time, we will not be able to change the tide on domestic violence.
Just to say, this is different because you got to remember, he is charged with RICO. So you're talking about mob type organization.
No.
Even when you're dealing with the mob, it's hard for a mobster to come forth and say, Gambino, I saw him give the hit order on this, that. Normally,
but I actually think it reinforces to people that do not have the resources that Cassie had to be able to look at that situation and say, little old me will never get my justice.
No, I don't disagree with that part. But I'm saying it had to be a victim in this case to come forward because for years it had been others who had been saying it.
But they didn't charge.
No, because no one believed them.
But what made this believable again also is that not only did he settle quickly, but the video, right? Yeah. And I think that piece of it too, undeniable video evidence that whatever you think now, what you see right here is proof.
Well, I just hope that Cassie's situation and all of this thing, and I understand the difference between the charges, God knows I do, but I just hope that people are not taken away that I need to have a video, I need to be a certain type of person in a certain type of situation in order to get justice. But right now, that's what it really does feel like in these courtrooms.
Well, hold on, I got to drop this bomb.
I
know I got 30 seconds.
Yes, sir.
But here's the bomb, because this is for part 2. The question we got to ask ourselves is this. This culture in this particular situation is going on in all cultures. Why isn't it taking so long for us to expose predators, period? And that is the second question.
All right, we got to end right there. Thank y'all for tuning in and checking out the show today. Lots of good discussion. It was just getting good.
It was.
But we got to go. Don't forget, like our YouTube page, The Crew Radio Show. Like and subscribe. Until next time, be blessed and be a blessing to someone else. Peace.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of The Crew Radio Show. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. We're always looking for great sponsors to support the show. If your company would like to reach our highly engaged audience, please drop us a line at thecrewradioshow757@gmail.com. Until next time, thank you for kicking it with the crew.